Hi everyone, welcome back to the Spring Garden series. Well, I know by now a lot of you have already started your seeds indoors. It's such an exciting time of year. Well, we started our seeds indoors about 3 weeks ago and oh my goodness, they are exploding with growth. Today we're going to be transplanting some of them into larger containers because it's not quite warm enough to get them outside yet. Look at the Marketmore cucumber and the yellow straight neck squash. They're growing like crazy. I can't believe how big these are. I mean, look at these leaves. The growth is absolutely phenomenal, and I just can't wait to be eating some beautiful yellow summer squash very soon. The peas here are going crazy. Now, peas are one of the earliest vegetables you can get planted outside, but we do need to transition and acclimate these to the outdoors, and we'll be planting them outside in just a couple of weeks. And I love how the lettuce tray is looking. It's looking absolutely delicious. I mean, I am absolutely ready to eat this, but we're going to be hardening these off too and then transplanting some of the red Russian kale into larger containers today. But I do want to bring you over here to the grow light box and show you how the tomatoes and peppers are doing. Now, just a little side note here. I did have the Marketmore cucumbers and the straight neck yellow squash under grow lights in another area of my house, in my grow light closet. A lot of you guys may have seen that. And these in here are cooler weather vegetables. So they've been out here and getting a lot of nice fresh air and also all that good light. But I did have the warmer weather vegetables like the peppers and the tomatoes here in the grow light box. Now, a lot of you have been asking how I get my grow lights set up, and I do have a really good video that tells you how to do that in detail. So I'll definitely link that in the video description. But look at the tomatoes, the basil, and the peppers in here. They've been on the heat mat because they love that heat to help them grow very quickly. And these tomatoes in the middle here are the ones we're going to be transplanting today. And they are looking absolutely beautiful. The basil is growing wonderfully. And now you'll notice here, these are the Hungarian hot wax peppers. They are actually just, one of them is just starting to germinate. So if your peppers are slow to germinate, don't worry too much about it. The hot ones especially take a little bit longer than the sweet ones. But this one over here is growing very, very nicely. And then the tomatoes up front here, I think this is the Mark Globe, and this one is the Golden Jubilee. So I think what's happening here is these Marglobes are kind of shading out the Golden Jubilee. So I think once we transplant the Marglobes, the Golden Jubilees will pick up as well. So we're going to actually take these outside and do our transplanting outside. But just so you know, we're still going to grow these indoors for a little bit longer because we've had some really cold nights here in California. It's been in the 30s. We've had the coldest winter we've had for lots and lots of years. So we're going to transplant these into bigger containers and then bring them back indoors to grow a little bit longer until the weather warms up. And Camera Guy is going to sit in on the video today. Woohoo! So Jerry, aka Camera Guy, it's great to have you out here filming with me today.
Yeah, it's kind of fun to sit in.
Absolutely. So guys, if you have not yet got your spring seeds started, it's not too late. You want to get your seeds started indoors about 4 to 6 weeks before your last frost date. And we're growing with the Spring Garden seed collection, so you can pick up one over on my website. It has 12 varieties, easy to grow seeds. If you're a new gardener or you're just a busy person and don't want to worry about what seeds to buy, it's a great way to get started. And you also want to go back and watch the first 2 videos in the series so you know exactly how to get your seeds started. But today we're going to transplant some of these seedlings into larger containers, like I mentioned. Mm-hmm. Now, any idea why we need to do that already? We're only 3 weeks in.
Well, I think they're getting bigger and their roots need the space to grow, if I remember. Right?
Absolutely. Now, it's not quite warm enough to get them outside, so we are going to put them into bigger containers so they can grow bigger and stronger. That way, when the weather does warm up, our plants will be ready to plant in the garden. So let me grab one of these pellets here. And a couple of clues to look for so you know they're ready to transplant. Any ideas what they would be?
I'm just taking guesses here. The roots are coming out of the peat pellet fabric.
Good job. That's the first one.
multiple
I didn't
answers.
catch him, you guys.
And then the other thing is I don't know, the leaves look big or something.
Okay, yeah. You want to look at the first 2 clues to look for are the roots. See how these roots are coming out of the bottom of the pellets? Mm-hmm. And I'll show you how it looks with the cups with soil in just a moment. But the second clue, That basically means that the roots need a little bit more room to breathe so the plant can grow bigger. The second clue is to take a look at the leaves or the size of the plant. Now, remember we talked about the baby leaves that come first when the seedling first starts to grow. But then once those baby leaves grow for a little while, these true tomato leaves pop out that look like the leaves of a tomato plant. So once your plant has a couple of sets of true leaves, which this tomato plant does, has one set here, another set right here, then that means that your plants are ready to transplant and need a little more space.
So does that mean this leaf, baby leaf, is eventually going to look like that leaf?
That's a good question. No, actually, this baby leaf is eventually going to drop off.
Oh my gosh.
Or you can just kind of pick it off on your own if you want to, once you have the true leaves.
That's interesting.
So this plant is maybe, I don't know, maybe it's about 6 inches tall. So we'll put it in a larger container and it'll grow a lot bigger and it'll be fun to get it put outside. So that's for the pellets. So this one is definitely ready. Now let me just show you one that's not quite ready. This is the Golden Jubilee, I believe. So you can see how much smaller this plant is. Like I mentioned, I think it's been getting shaded out by the Mara Globe. A few little tiny roots coming out the bottom, but it's really a much smaller plant. So I'm going to let this grow in the pellets just a little bit longer. And I think we may go ahead and transplant one of the little basil plants today. These do have a couple of different sets of leaves as well. So we'll kind of go through the process and which plants I'm going to transplant and which plants we'll let grow in the pellets.
So it's a very case-by-case analysis.
Exactly.
As to whether or not you transplant it.
Right, you really want to look at each plant on an individual basis. So let's get started with the tomato plant, and then I think we'll do a pepper and maybe one of the squash plants. So first thing you want to do is, of course, make sure you find a larger container. Now, you don't want to get a big, huge, giant container because number one, it's not going to fit in my house. I don't have enough grow light space. So actually what I'm going to use for the tomato plant is one of the little Smart Pots transplanters, because it's actually a good size to transplant a tomato in. But you can also use these plastic pots that I just picked up like at the garden center. You can get these for free. A lot of times they're just throwing them away, or if you purchase a transplant, just hang on to these because you can save them for potting your plants.
Nothing wrong with free.
Absolutely, we're all about that. So we've got our transplanter here. There's a really fun little container because the sides kind of break away and it makes it easier to transplant in the garden. So we've got our soil here, and I'm using the Good Dirt potting mix. You can use the Good Dirt potting mix or the indoor potting soil. But I love this because it's nice and light and fluffy. It's got some really good nutrients in it, which really help feed the plants until they get big enough to put outside. So we got that there. We're going to moisten it in just a second.
It just feels so good. It really does. I've never felt anything like this before.
I know, it's great stuff. And we are going to put links in the video description because you can get a 10% discount on this with my code there. So actually, first off, remember the first thing we do here?
No.
Water. Moisten the soil.
Okay.
Yeah. We're going to moisten this a little bit. Use a little bit more water in here. And you really want to get your soil pre-moistened before you transplant, because that way the plant immediately has all of the water that it needs to start off things, and then it can absorb and just have all the nutrients it needs to start off with, and you don't have little air pockets like you would if you tried to water it in later. So you can see I'm just mixing it, adding some water as I do that. I always like to say I like it to be the consistency of a crumbly brownie mix. You don't really want to be able to squeeze any, a few little drops of water are coming out there. Just a few. But you don't want it to be like sopping wet. So it's looking pretty good. And I am actually going to add in some worm castings. And these are Vermistera worm castings. Love these guys, and you guys know I test all these supplies in my garden to make sure they work really, really well. I've used both of these for a couple of years, so really like how they help get your seedlings off to a good start. So I'm going to add a couple of scoops of the Vermistera worm castings. And again, you can get this for a 10% discount as well by using the code CaliKim. I'm going to put 3 scoops in just to give my seedlings some really good nutrients over the next month or so. I'm gonna mix it in. Might need just a little more water.
It's kind of funny as you do that, you know, I did this video last year, right? This series?
We did the fall garden series.
Oh, fall garden.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like in school when, you know, the teacher says, yeah, we covered this in first semester. And I'm like, dude, that was first semester, okay? I'm not remembering first semester. So yeah.
It was like 6 months ago.
Okay.
It was a while, so don't feel too bad.
It's kind of funny though.
We're just mixing this in so there's not a lot of dry pockets of soil.
I hope you guys like that we're filming outside for all of you people who are still stuck inside because of the weather. So we hope that you enjoy being out on the back deck with us.
That's right. And spring is actually, what I think, about a month, 3 weeks away. So that's really exciting.
And what's funny too is you guys can't see it, but we've got umbrellas above our heads and above the camera equipment because we've got dark clouds up here. So it's kind of fun.
So hopefully we make it before the rain hits, huh? Okay, so what I'm going to have you do, Jerry, is fill up, here, let me move this out of the way. Fill up our little transplanter here, maybe about 3/4 of the way full.
All right. Tell me when.
Keep going.
I didn't realize I was going to.
You didn't know I was going to put you to work, right? Okay, that's good. All right, now what we're going to do is we are going to take our tomato plant and we are going to peel off the netting. Now I like to peel off the netting because I feel like it just kind of restricts the roots a little bit, and I want the roots to have plenty of room to breathe. So, I'm going to do the honors?
Oh, sure. You got it.
You don't have to be super, super gentle because it's pretty hardy.
Yeah, this stuff is.
Yeah. There we go. Now, I always have a lot of people ask me, okay, but you have 3 tomato plants in there. So a lot of times what I'll do is I do like to thin them out because it ends up being way too much for this container. So you can have a couple different options here. You can either snip them off or you can kind of peel apart your pellet here very carefully to separate the seedlings. I know some people don't like to kill their seedlings. You want to have as many tomato plants as possible. So I'm going to separate my seedlings very carefully, pull them apart. And here I have 3 different tomato plants that I can now transplant into 3 different plants, 3 different pots.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Just be kind of careful with the roots there. So there we go, we got a little tiny baby tomato seedling. Now the trick with tomato seedlings, what's pretty cool, is wherever the stem touches the soil, it grows roots, which means we can plant this pretty deeply in the pot. It'll be a nice sturdy plant. So Jerry has filled this about 3/4 full with soil, and we're gonna stick this down in here. And we can actually plant it up to the first layer of leaves here. So then Jerry, what I'm gonna have you do is add some more soil to the pot. Just holding my little tomato plant in place carefully. A little more on the other side and this baby will stand up by itself. There we go. Okay, and I'm actually just gonna grab my hand, I think, and add some more soil. It'll be a little easier. We kind of push it down, take out any air pockets and give it a little bit more support. And we are good to go. Pretty exciting, guys. Our first Marglobe tomato planted. And the cool thing is, as this plant grows over the next few weeks, we can add some more soil, and that way it'll help that plant put some more, even more roots down around the stem.
Well, I was wondering if you were going to do this.
Gotta label them. I'm always forgetting to label. It's a Marglobe tomato, and I put the date on it so I can remember when I transplanted it. So we got our tomato down here. I'm going to scooch this aside, and look at all this lovely dirt. We'll make a little mess here, but that's okay. It's one reason why we like to move outside. But you can definitely do it. Whoops, there goes my tomatoes. You can definitely do it inside as well. And I'm going to save these to up pot a little bit later. We'll do that.
What does that mean?
Up pot means you're moving up in size in your pot. Some people call it transplanting, or you can also call it up.
So it's what we're doing right now.
It's what we're doing right now.
Okay.
Okay, so next thing I'm going to transplant is, let's do one of these pepper plants so I can show you what the roots look like in a little container with soil. So you can see this pepper plant definitely has plenty of leaves here. It's even got a couple of flowers. These have actually been growing inside for probably maybe 8 or 10 weeks. So these really do need to get up potted. It does have some roots coming out the bottom there. You see those? And one thing you can also do is kind of hold the stem like this.
That's what I remember.
Turn it upside down. Give it a little squeeze.
Loosen it up.
Loosen it up. You don't want to pull on the stem because you definitely don't want to break your stem off. And then gently kind of pull it out. So when the roots are getting a little root bound there, so okay.
Oh, yeah.
Took a little bit longer to come out there, but you can see what the roots look like. This is definitely ready to get transplanted. I should have prepared the little container first. We're just going to set this aside here. I'm going to hold it actually, and Jerry, if you want to go ahead and add soil to that container.
Same amount. What's that?
Yeah, about the same amount. So the cool thing about peppers is you can actually plant, there's 2 peppers in here, but you can plant peppers really close together. They actually kind of like being close together and kind of touching and shading each other. And it really helps that when they get hot, so they provide the actual peppers with some shade and they don't get sun scald. Okay, you want to add probably a little bit more in there because the peppers you don't need to plant quite as deeply into the container. Yeah, so we'll add some more. Keep going.
Oh.
Okay, that looks good. Perfect. And this one we're not going to plant deep. We're just going to put it at about the same level as the container. The top of the pepper plant will be about the same level as the container. And we want to hang on to that. Just going to add some more soil here. The worm castings and the good dirt soil are going to really help.
So why didn't you go as deep with this one?
Well, the peppers, the tomatoes put roots out at the stem. So that way you can plant your tomatoes deep. It'll be nice and sturdy. The peppers, you don't really need to do that. They don't really put as much roots out at the stem like the tomatoes do. So we can just plant them about soil level.
Good to know.
I'm gonna kind of push that down. Wow, that looks so pretty in there, doesn't it?
It does.
And one reason why I actually went with the transplanters, the Smart Pots transplanters, is because the pepper and the tomato plants are going to get pretty good size. So they'll grow into this pot and they'll be ready to go outside. And make sure you head to smartpots.com and use my code for this one as well, because all these supplies you can get a 10% discount on. The good dirt, the vermister, and the Smart Pots.
I like that. I think that is just brilliant. Okay, anyway.
So we're good to go there. We've got a tomato and a pepper, and getting a little messy here, aren't we? I think what we're gonna do is do one of the how about we do the squash and then a kale plant. But I'm gonna need to go grab some more soil. Okay, I grabbed some more soil. I'm also gonna add in some more worm castings. So our squash plants and our cucumber plant has some nice fresh nutrients. That's another reason why it's a great idea to transplant, is because we're going to give our plants fresh nutrients so they can really move to the next level of growth. So let's grab, I think we're going to do the squash plant because this plant is getting absolutely humongous in this little tiny container. I mean, can you believe this is only 3 weeks worth of growth?
No, that seems really huge to me.
It's crazy. So remember the clues we look for are clue number 1, the roots.
A couple little ones.
I think there's little small roots coming out. Now, and the leaves, definitely we have 2 full sets of true leaves. We've got our baby leaves here. We've got big leaves right here, another set right here. And then in the middle, we actually have, it almost looks like some little buds coming out. So hopefully the weather will be warm enough so we can get these out in the garden in a couple of weeks. Now I'm not gonna make the same mistake I did last time. We're gonna fill up our soil, our container with soil first. And you can see this is about the same size as the transplanter, but I just didn't have any more transplanters, so let's go ahead and get that one filled up with soil. And the squash plant, you do want to put into a much larger container. Now, kind of a general rule of thumb is to go 25%, maybe 40% bigger than the container that the plant is already in. But you know, it's not a hard and fast rule, but it's just kind of a general rule of thumb to go by. So we've got our container filled up here. Thanks, Jerry. And you want to do the honors on this one, tipping it upside down. There you go, you got that right.
I'm trying to show my hand.
Grasping the stem there. We'll take a look at the roots. Oh wow, those roots look really, really nice. Look at those.
Yeah,
Aren't those
they do.
nice? They're just kind of starting to wrap around, so it's a perfect time to transplant them. So we can go ahead and put that in the container there. Now, the squash also does not need to be transplanted deep like the tomato plant is, like the tomato plant does. So we're just going to put it, I think we can need a little bit more soil underneath there actually. We'll just put the top of the plant kind of at the top of the container here. If you want to grab a few more handfuls of soil, put that in. Now, I've had a lot of people also ask, when is it time to get the plants out in the garden? Well, for the warm weather vegetables like squash, tomatoes, and peppers, you really do not want to get them out in the garden until a couple of weeks after your last frost date. They really grow best when the nights are in the mid 50s to the mid 60s and the daytime temperatures are in the 60s, well, really the 70s on up to about the 80s. Uh-oh.
Sorry.
That's okay. I was just kidding. No, they're actually pretty resilient. So the squash plants grow so fast. Those are going to grow right back. You're off the hook, camera guy.
Okay, good.
So if the weather's warm enough where you live, you can definitely get these transplanted right from this stage right into the garden. But again, you don't want to rush the process. You want to acclimate them first. And we'll go over that in another video in the Spring Garden series. So look how beautiful this looks.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't
it
that
does.
look great?
It actually does, yeah.
So the extra soil and nutrients are going to take it really to the next level of growth. It's got some more room to breathe. Of course, we're going to get our little label in here so we don't forget. And we are good to go on the squash plant.
Very cool.
Awesome. Okay, so I think we're going to do the cucumber plant maybe off camera, because actually, guys, we're filming at night here, running out of daylight. So, and we want to get the video in before it starts to rain too. So let me just grab one of the kale plants here, because I want to show you what to do when you have a smaller pellet, which really isn't that much different. But here we have this little red Russian kale.
It's really small.
Isn't that beautiful? But I did plant these in the smaller 1-inch pellets because they're pretty, you know, they start off small, but they grow fine in the 1-inch pellets until you can get them out in the garden. So we're just going to do it in a small little container here. So you know the drill. Fill it up with soil, and we're going to peel the netting off. Now, kale is super, super hardy. It's good for the cold and for the heat, so it's a great plant to grow in your garden. In California, it grows here really well year-round. But look at the roots there. Don't those look beautiful? Now you can see how the true leaves on the kale are starting to turn yellow, and pretty soon they'll just kind of drop off, or you can pinch them off too. It really doesn't matter too much. So we've got the roots, we've got some true leaves here in the kale plant, and we'll just make a little indentation in our container. Actually, I'm going to push the soil down just a little bit more so it's kind of packed in there and doesn't get a lot of air holes. So Jerry, if you could add just a little bit more soil to that container, because we'll plant the kale about level with the top of the container too. So make a little indentation. I'm going to add a little more soil in here. Now the kale you can get planted outside right around the time of your last frost date, and kale will actually take a frost. So if you have a really good established plant, you can get it planted outside even a week or so before your last frost date, and it's going to do just fine. Now we've got our kale tag, and we are good to go. Now the lettuce I'm going to let grow in the pellets a little bit longer, and we're going to do another video on how to transition them off and get them ready for the outdoors. Okay, next we don't want to forget to water our newly transplanted seedlings. They definitely need some more nutrients at this point. Now, what I like to do is use a water-soluble fertilizer. I use the Vermistera worm tea and the Good Dirt plant food, both excellent water-soluble organic fertilizers. And you really still want to go a little bit easy on your seedlings here because even though they're getting bigger, they're still pretty young. So I usually go about half strength. So I've got my watering can. I'm going to pour in a couple capfuls of the Vermistera worm tea.
So you mean you're going a lighter amount of Vermistera?
A lighter amount, right. You don't really want to overdo it with your seedlings.
Yep.
Worm tea is super, super gentle, so it's a great fertilizer to use on your seedlings.
Yep.
It really does help with root development, which is really important right now. Just putting them into a bigger container, they need some more roots. And then we're going to also give them the Good Dirt plant food, organic, and it's got a good nitrogen level in here, which is going to really help promote some more good leafy growth. So I'm going to put actually just about half a pump here to my little watering can.
Right into the water as well.
Yeah, it's super,
I
super
didn't
handy.
know you were doing that.
Yeah. And then give it a little stir. And then we're going to bottom water these. Now, do you have any idea why we do that?
Well, I remember you saying that you don't want to disrupt the soil up on the top here and the seedlings, but these seem like older and strong enough now. It's still a concern though?
Well, they're not as little, you don't need to really worry about disrupting the seeds, but the main reason is it's just a healthier way to water. There could be any little bacteria or anything in there. So actually, I'll probably just pour it right here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just a little easier.
I'll do it in the next
from
one.
this angle. So I'm gonna put maybe 3 or 4 inches in here, and watering from the bottom, like I was saying, you're not disrupting or moving around, splashing any bacteria or anything off the leaves.
Makes total sense. I thought these would be big enough and strong enough now, but it makes sense.
Well, you just want to be really, really careful that you're not splashing the water everywhere.
Right.
So we've got about 3 or 4 inches in there, and after 10 or 15 minutes, what's going to happen is the pots and the soil will really soak up the water and distribute evenly throughout the container, so they really get a better watering that way as well. Sometimes if you water from the top, the soil is still kind of dry throughout. So let these sit for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then we'll pour the extra water off because you don't want your plants sitting in water for a long time. You don't want the roots getting rotted. So you pour out the extra and then water some other plants with it. Well, thanks a lot for joining us, guys. It's been a lot of fun to hang out with you here, and make sure you subscribe, like the video, follow along with the Spring Garden series because we're going to be following these plants all the way out into the garden. The next step for them is to acclimate them gradually to the outdoors, which we'll be doing on the next video in the Spring Garden series.
And another advantage to subscribing is that you get to see how these develop.
Absolutely.
Down the line as they go. So if you want to see that, make sure you subscribe and you click on the notifications thing. That way it tells you whenever we upload a new video, and you can see how these are doing.
Right. We'd love to have you join us. Pick up one of the Spring Garden seed collections and grow along with us. And I forgot to say, what we're going to do with these plants next is move them back inside and put them back under the grow lights. And then once the weather, about a week or so, once you're about a week out from putting them out in the garden, we'll be acclimating them to the outdoors. So stay tuned and comment below. Let us know if you've got your spring garden seeds started yet. We'd love to hear what you're growing and what you're excited about for spring.
Yeah, and when you do make a comment, tell us where you're from too, because it's really neat just to see all the places from all over the world that people are watching. I can't believe it. It's really, really neat. And we're starting to get more Australian viewers too.
That's right.
So that's really cool because they're opposite us. So it's still nice to have them there.
That's right. They're coming into their winter now pretty soon.
That's right.
So all right, guys, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you on the next video.